unsettling, insidious, confusing, emotional, nerve-wracking, some of the words that have been used to describe The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, a masterpiece in horror literature. Let's go inside. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Sinead and this is my spooky corner of YouTube, where I talk about the spooky books that I've read, the spooky films that I've watched, and I share the occasional spooky shenanigan with you, depending on what the walls tell me to do. They whisper so at night. And today I will be talking about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Da da da. A book that is revered as one of the great modern horror books of all time, one of the great haunted house stories ever put to page. I'm going to give an overview of the story and then getting into the detail of what I think works in the book, what resonates, what I think is scary, and then considering different interpretations of what indeed is happening in Hill House. And yes, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't read the book and you wanted to go into it blind, I would suggest you read it first and you can come back and find this video later. Housekeeping as always, this is my personal opinion on the book. This is a book that people love to dissect and love to offer different opinions on, so if you have read The Haunting of Hill House, the comment section is open. I would love to know from you what you think was going on in the book, how you read the whole story, what do you think of different characters. This is an opportunity for us all to get involved in a nice, friendly discussion. Be kind in the comments to other people and to me, preferably. This is a book that also leaves people cold. It can leave them confused. A lot of people weigh in and go, not scary at all. Let's try to remember that what is considered scary is subjective most of this time. Sometimes it's objective and that gets more frightening. We're having fun, we're talking books, let's all just enjoy ourselves and maybe try to terrify each other. The Haunting of Hill House is a Gothic horror novel that was published in 1959 by the writer Shirley Jackson. This was Shirley Jackson's fifth novel and it is considered to be possibly her best, up alongside We Have Always Lived in the Castle and the incredible short story The Lottery. For a very brief description, The Haunting of Hill House is all about a reportedly haunted house, Hill House, which is in an undisclosed location in America. And a gentleman named Dr. Montague is conducting scientific research into this haunted house. And he has sent invitations out to people that he would like to take part in this investigation. Dr. Montague is eventually joined by the two people who responded to his advertisement, a young woman named Eleanor, another young woman named Theo, and also there's another man who must join them, a young man named Luke, who is a relative of the family who own the house. The owners of the house say, it's okay for you to do this experiment here, but one of our family members needs to be there. The book is focused on the experiences of these core four people with a couple of supporting players in the background. The quartet spends several days in the house conducting light experiments, but strange things definitely do happen, unsettling, weird things. But as you can imagine with any haunting, there is this constant question, is this real or is this being faked by someone in the group? And the finger of suspicion falls more often than not towards Eleanor. The house seems to be focusing its activity towards Eleanor, and the activity in the house will only escalate, and also the questions around what is real and what is not will continue to spin. I first read The Haunting of Hill House in my 20s, and rereading it this month, as a woman now in her 40s, again, completely different experience. It is the power of why certain books deserve to be reread at different stages in your life. When I was in my 20s, I found this book confusing but frightening and was not really sure that I liked it. Rereading this book, I had a completely different experience of it. I still consider it to be uncanny, an unsettling, frightening book, but I connected with the characters in a completely different way. It sounds completely obvious to say it. Describing the story of Hill House does not describe the experience of reading it. It does follow a linear structure. It's just always kind of off-kilter. There's something about the way that Shirley Jackson writes that is so evocative. You can conjure the imagery in your head perfectly. You have wonderful scene setting, but it's like snapshots are taken through the story. And you get this sense of plot, of action, of narrative action, of development, but you sort of feel like like you are seeing snapshots. It's like, that's how I would describe it. Like you're seeing excerpts of things suddenly happening and moving on, and you just feel off kilter a lot of the time. And that is the genius of Shirley Jackson. That is partly why I think this book is unsettling. I'm going to give you a synopsis of the book, and yes, there are spoilers ahead. I'm going to go through what the story uncovers, unfolds as you go through what is a relatively short book, really. The haunted house itself opens this book, a description of the house is put front and center, and then we start to get introduced to the characters. But it is established from the off that Hill House is a character in this book. And the opening of the book is weird. It's weird. No live organism can continue to exist sanely under the conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. It is talking about living organisms, sanity, reality, and the fact that a house existed and something in it walking alone. It creates the idea that this house is sentient. After those few lines, we jump to character studies of all of the key players who are going to be in this story. So we hear about Dr. John Montague, who is the investigator, and he is going to be looking into the supernatural. Him putting out this call to people and the people who responded. We have Eleanor. Eleanor, we understand, is a woman who has been caring for her sickly mother for years. Really, she has not really had much of a life at all. She is shy, she is introverted. As a child, she and her sister were living with her mother, and they experienced stones raining on their house. Eleanor knew that it was strange, there was no rational explanation, but her mother insisted that it was the neighbours throwing stones at their house because that they were jealous of them. Her mother has passed away, and she is now living with her sister and her brother-in-law. They're very bossy, controlling, they're very condescending towards Eleanor. You really get the sense of this woman who has been put upon and has all of these kind of this want to be free, and she desperately wants to respond to this invitation. We also hear in this introduction about the other female who's going to be joining the group, Theodora, also known as Theo. She is a bohemian artist. She is an independent woman. She apparently has psychic abilities, and she has this representation from the start of being someone who is in control of her life. She's everything that Eleanor is not at this stage. This confidence and this stylish lifestyle and her creativity. But we also get glimpses of Theo's past, of how sort of volatile she can be, that she smashed her friends' figurines in their apartment. Ooh, there's an anger bubbling up under there. And really, we see initially that Theo may be very much queer-coded, that she is possibly a lesbian, and this will become more clear through the story. We're also briefly introduced to Luke, who is the heir to the estate, who must attend because that's part of the rules of the house. And he is a confident man, and he's very privileged, and he comes across as quite carefree, not necessarily flippant or rude or mean. I think in the film interpretations later on, he's played out as much more silly and sort of jokey and condescending. He's weirdly passive at points, though he has an active role. He sort of assists the rest of the characters, in my opinion. Eleanor really will be our focal point of the story. It's really her perspective and her emotions that carry us through the tale. One of my favourite scenes in the book is this early interplay that she has with her sister, where Eleanor just wants to use the car that she pays for half of. She wants to take the car to go to this thing. She doesn't have anything going on in her life. And the dialogue in that scene, oh, it hits home. Instantly, we are forced to care about Eleanor, and we are put on edge as well in this interplay with the sister and the brother-in-law talking to Eleanor and about Eleanor as if she is a child, acting like she couldn't be responsible if she takes the car. They basically don't want her to have the car. They just keep making up these petty excuses, and Eleanor is standing, repeating herself, saying, "It's half my car." She's repeating herself as if no one is listening to her. And it's a good foreshadowing for the rest of the story, with these people around her treating her like she is an infant, treating like she doesn't know what's best for her, and making assumptions about her. Oh, it puts you on edge because you want to fight for Eleanor, and you want Eleanor to use her voice more. But then Eleanor just takes the car, and she just goes. And this was a representation of Eleanor. I'm going to do something. I'm going to break free. I'm going to break the rules for once, having lived this sheltered life and of servitude, really, to her mother. So you're immediately on Eleanor's side, even with this bubbling tension underneath. From there, we spend not an insubstantial amount of time, given the size of the book, and it really is only a few pages, traveling with Eleanor to Hill House and her experience of driving across America, because again, we don't know where she's going or coming from. We don't know how long the journey is. You know, we're not given that information. But she drives and she encounters different places, and her observation of just life outside of her four walls that she's been stuck in at home, and her just going into fantasy worlds of her making up stuff about looking at a doorstep with two stone lions on the porch and sort of adorning it, and just inventing this whole world if she lived there. There's this wonderful scene in a cafe that she stops at, and she sees a family with a little girl, and the little girl won't drink her milk because she wants her cup with stars, the cup that she drinks in at home, her cup of stars. And her parents just coaxing her and going, no, you must take your milk. And Eleanor's voice comes through in her head, obviously not to the people, saying, Don't do it, Eleanor told the little girl. Insist on your cup of stars. Once they have trapped you into being like everyone else, you will never see your cup of stars again. Don't do it. Don't do it. I jumped in there with, obviously this is in her head, but the passage doesn't say that. It says Eleanor told the little girl. She could be talking out loud, and the parents could just be ignoring her, because the father and the mother then just keep talking after that. That was so striking reading that again, of how her instinct was to tell the girl to rebel. We all want our cup of it gets to me. It got to me. A phrase that plays in Eleanor's head as she's getting closer to the house is this phrase, journey's end in lover's meeting. That's from Twelfth Night, Shakespeare. This thing that she keeps playing in her head, journey's end in lover's meeting. And we're left to wonder, what does she mean? Is she hoping to meet a lover there? Is she hoping that this will be the start of her life? Her journey's end? Is an end a good thing? What does this mean? We arrive with Eleanor, and finally we meet this house that we were introduced to at the start of this book. Inside the house we meet Mrs. Dudley, the housekeeper, who is not helpful at all, but cooks well. That's the nice thing in this book. They have some splendid meals in it, and that is something I can appreciate in Hill House. She just turns up, lays shit out, and then fucks off into town. The classic creepy servants who are there in that great Gothic tradition, who aren't giving all of the information, who aren't running up to the people and warning them with kindness in their hearts of going, don't stay here, this is an awful place. They're just resentful and they're huffing. But we're not in the 1800s anymore. These are people who've been hired, and yeah, they gotta get paid, but would they be following any kind of decorum? Because they friggin' don't in the book. They are so moody with everyone. Maybe they're just disgruntled staff who didn't want to come out and do this job at the house. So you've got that kind of, okay, you're creepy, but maybe it's my imagination. Maybe people are just moody. I think what Hill House does brilliantly from this point on is this interplay of the characters with some very creepy shit that goes down in that house, but you can possibly explain all of it away. As Eleanor starts to discover the house, she meets Theo. And all of this, I shall say, happens quickly. We don't get huge passages of her discovering the house at this stage, of discovering how weird it is and really how unsettling it is architecturally. We move to her meeting Theo and this friendship establishing, this strange, fractured, push and pull friendship that will be the backbone, I think, of this book. And they kind of slip into this childlike adventure and exploration of the house, talking about things like skipping stones and having picnics and going on exploring the grounds, like a pair of children who are sort of wide-eyed with wonderness, not to women in their 30s. Theo brings that happiness and that kind of light to it, but Eleanor absolutely reciprocates it. You don't get the sense that Eleanor is consciously lying to Theo when she sort of makes up stories about where she comes from, what her house is. Who's going to know? Who's going to know the truth? And there we have, every time we think, why are they talking in riddles and lies? Why are they making stuff up? Why don't they just tell the truth to each other? We have that hark back to that opening passage in the book. No one can live in absolute reality. We then meet Dr. Montague and we meet Luke in the house. Dr. Montague relays the history of Hill House, the horrors that have happened there, the deaths, the sadness, the different people who have lived there, the generational trauma that has been experienced, the accidental deaths that have occurred there, the people taking their own lives, the awful way that one of the ancestors, Hugh Crane, decided to give information to his daughters that, this malevolence all the way through it. But they also reveal that all the way back when Hill House was first built, it was intentionally built to not make sense. The house twists and turns on itself. It's meant to make you get lost. There are doors, multiple doors and rooms. There's the turret where someone hanged themselves and spiral staircases. The house doesn't make sense. It's not a thing that is lingered on for long in this book. You would think, given the reputation of The Haunting of Hill House and the fact that the house is a character it's established from the off, that Shirley Jackson would have spent pages and pages describing the mind-bending qualities of this house. But it's almost inexplicable. It's just the sense of disruption through this house that you get permeating through the pages, which I think works very well. You're not hung up on the specific details, which maybe could take you out of the story more if you were trying to work out with heavy descriptions of how weird the house was. Yes, it would paint a picture, but it would take you away from the real heart of the story, which is the people and the characters and the haunting itself, the people who haunt this house and the way the house haunts them. In between scenes of quite happy sort of domesticity, really, between the quartet, sometimes when they're sort of bored, waiting for things to happen or going out on adventures and exploring, the strange experiences start happening. One night, Eleanor hears deafening banging on her door, and Theo joins her in her room, and the two of them experience this really loud knocking and banging across the doors and the sounds of laughter. Luke and Dr. Montague at the same time say that they have seen a dog running through the house, but they couldn't find it. Later, they will experience other hauntings. Actually, my favourite, creepiest bit of the book is the writing the first time we see it. A simple writing on the wall, but help Eleanor come home. I find that so unsettling, really unsettling, far more than what we will see later with blood splattered all over Theo's room. Theo goes into her room and finds it spattered with what seems to be blood and writing on the wall as well, and all of her clothes ripped up in this bizarre display. There is a cold spot in the house. The brilliant scene at night where Eleanor and Theo are sharing a room for the second time. Eleanor thinks she's holding Theo's hand. When they turn the lights on, she's like, whose hand was I holding? Whose hand was she holding? The ghostly picnic. Now, those are words that shouldn't be frightening. The scene where Eleanor and Theo have gone out and they have sort of become lost wandering in the grounds, and they chance upon what appears to be a family, this ghostly family having a picnic. In the sunshine, everyone there starts to question each other, and really the focal point is that Theo and Eleanor's closeness, they start to then fracture a little. They start to bicker between them. Theo is very quick to point the finger at Eleanor when things have gone wrong in the house. And it's like, you're supposed to be my friend, this reaction that Eleanor has. And everyone sort of doesn't really leap to her defense or doesn't really explain it. They all start questioning, well, who could have done that? No one ever really turns to Dr. Montague and says, this could be you. There's the odd statement, and they maybe suggest that Luke could have written some stuff or messed some stuff up, but it always seems to be focused on Eleanor. Could Eleanor be doing this? And Eleanor, in turn, accuses Theo of doing things, and she switches between really wanting this closeness with Theo, who is her friend, who she confides with, who she spends all this time with, this really quick and fast closeness that she has with her, and then having these flashes of anger at Theo, of really feeling really angry towards her and hating her. They're sort of disintegrating and making up as the activity in the house increases. We have the arrival of Dr. Montague's wife, Mrs. Montague, who turns up, who is herself a psychic medium and who has all sorts of alternative methods of attracting the spirits. And her presence in the house, she is haughty and she is bossy, and she pushes her husband around as soon as she gets in there. As soon as she arrives, Dr. Montague sort of has to shrink back, and his character changes so much with the arrival of her and her friend Arthur, who is the head teacher of a boys' school and has driven her up there, and those two are having an affair. Those two are definitely having an affair. Let's just be clear that that's not right, that friendship. And it sort of serves to emasculate Dr. Montague. It's a great bit in the book to introduce these different characters and their perception of what's happening, and to show the weaknesses of the characters that we've gotten to know. Eleanor continues to experience these hauntings, and different people will experience it with her, but Eleanor is the one who's most affected by it, the one who seems to be changing. Her character starts to alter. She goes from being happy to being really distressed by it and experiencing these sort of almost violent internal kind of thoughts towards the people around her. At the climax of the book, it appears that Eleanor, however you wish to interpret this, succumbs to the house. She lets the house in, just releases herself to it, and then starts moving around it and mimicking the sounds that she has heard. Maybe she is doing things, she is sort of dancing and kind of walking and feeling the stones under her feet in this sort of dreamlike state, and goes up the rickety spiral staircase, which is not safe, towards the turret, towards where someone ended their life, and is there exploring, and the others come in and see she's in danger. If the spiral staircase collapses, she's dead, and manage to get her down. The others decide the house is no longer safe for Eleanor, and Eleanor does not want to go. She's saying she is home. This is her home. She doesn't want to leave. But they convince her to get into her car, to drive away. And in the final pages of the book, the final page of the book really, Eleanor drives away from Hill House, and she feels herself, the car, headed straight towards the oak tree, where one of the ancestors died before, and her car hits the tree. In her final moments, Eleanor is both thinking, I'm doing this myself, I'm making my own choice, and then also thinking, why am I doing this? Why is no one stopping me? Why is no one stopping the car heading for the tree? And in the final passages of the book, we know that everyone else moves on and moves away from Hill House and gets on with their lives, apart from Eleanor. The big question around The Haunting of Hill House is this a haunted house? Or, as we are psychological horror, is this all in Eleanor's head? Or is this being made up by the people around her? Shirley Jackson wrote The Haunting of Hill House as a supernatural story, as a ghost story, but it was inspired by a news article, I think it was, that she'd read about a group of paranormal investigators, psychic researchers back in the 19th century who were investigating a haunted house. In her own words, she said that the dry reports they produced were not the story of a haunted house. It was the story of several earnest, she believed, misguided, certainly determined people with their differing motivations and backgrounds. From that opening passage where we meet the house and this weird statement talking about no one can live in absolute reality and stay sane, we are confronted with this idea of what's real and what's not. Why would you want to stay in reality? Is Hill House haunted by something malevolent? Does it represent an alternative space where reality doesn't make sense? Is the reality that all the people are living in the house really the reality that they think they are living in? How in touch with reality are the people who have come to Hill House? How in touch with themselves are they? What lies do they tell themselves? What perception do they have of the world, of different people? And how is that challenged by Hill House itself? This is an evil house with a dark history, with all of that rich history that you'd be looking for in a haunted house book. The striking thing about this novel is that it doesn't linger for a very long time on the very rich, wild history that it has. And I think again points to one of the strengths of Haunting of Hill House, of why it feels confusing and uncomfortable, is that it doesn't seek answers. It doesn't give you this information and then show people trying to put two and two together of explaining what is happening. The characters in this book do not go to the past. They don't try to say, well, this must be the reason for it, apart from some passing comments. It is all down to the people and what they are experiencing. No one seems to be there to explain it. They are there to experience, I certainly feel, in the book. And the house is giving them what they want, giving them the experience that they are seeking. Why is the house doing all of this? We don't know. We don't know the cause behind the various hauntings in Hill House, and that is one of the reasons it's scary. The knocking may have a bit of an explanation, because as Eleanor opens up more and explains the night that her mother died, her mother was banging on the wall and calling her, and Eleanor didn't answer. And she feels guilty. She feels that she has contributed to her mother's death as a result. So is the knocking for Eleanor to torment her? Help Eleanor come home. What does that mean? Is it mean help her come home to the house? Or is there a comma missing? Is it help Eleanor come home? Is it the mother calling to her from beyond the grave, which is nasty? What did Theo see in that picnic that made her scream and run? Was it the idea of domesticity? Was it the idea of, did she recognize the ghost there? Was it just the idea that there's ghosts having a picnic and that is, fuck no, running away? I get it. There's the cold spot. I don't find cold spots particularly scary, you know, but it's a weird phenomena. I hate cold spots, all right? There are plenty of symbols in there. There are plenty of hints at stuff, but this is a book that is not there to hold your hand, ironically, because you don't know whose hand you're holding, and walk you through all of the explanations. I think that there is, as I said, a true haunting in Hill House, and Eleanor's own insecurities, her loneliness, her trauma, is what is manifesting into something awful. Maybe she did mess up Theo's room. Maybe she did write on the wall. But something else is happening in that house. And unless you want to go down the line of everyone else in there is really targeting and trying to mess Eleanor up for fun, there are things that can't be explained. The house allows the people who visit it to do the horror for it. In true psychological horror brilliance, the house becomes more uncomfortable, more dangerous, and it is a more dangerous place to really express yourself, to be an individual in that house. And the way that Hill House is framed at the beginning and the end of the book, that whatever walked there walked alone. The core element of this story is loneliness. Loneliness in the book is so well portrayed through Eleanor, because that she has been alone for her life. Even though she's been surrounded by family, she's never experienced family. She's never experienced love and acceptance and friendship. And that is why there is that kind of childlike quality to her. So when she arrives at Hill House, she is like a kid. She sort of comes out of her shell and she experiences this glimpse of friendship, but in so many ways that I think a lot of people, again, can empathize with, can feel truly in their heart. When Eleanor experiences rejection from Theo, because Theo, through the book, is kind to her, and then she can be very mean. Eleanor asks Theo if she can come back with her after the experiment, that she wants to go back with her. She doesn't really ask her. She says, I want to come back with you. And Theo is vague about it. She doesn't exactly say no, but she doesn't say yes. And then it's clear that she doesn't want her to come back and is saying, no, you can't. Is that because Theo has a partner, has a relationship already, that she just doesn't want Eleanor, that she's just sort of been toying with her and playing with her, or that she's unsettled by Eleanor and actually, no, this is not a good idea? And the way that Eleanor responds to it in the book, you really feel her sadness of like that weight of someone uncomfortably pushing you away, you know, that awkward feeling of being rejected. Oh, it hits you hard. And this is brought out in the strangeness of the house. It mirrors how much of a puzzle Eleanor is, because she wants love and she wants family and she wants closeness, but she's always sort of going around in circles. Whereas the rest of the people in the house, while they are flawed, do have a place, a home to go to. They have a life, they have a path that they can follow, and Eleanor has no path, and she has no path through the house. The climax of the book works so well because you have this sense of everyone understanding, apart from Eleanor, because she's sort of come under the control of the house, that they all thought they knew what they were up against, and they don't. And that's a great message about mental health, about the impact that kind of situation can have on a person. You are meddling with forces beyond your control, and that's not necessarily life or death or the supernatural. That's someone's trauma that you have used for an experiment, and it has gone way beyond what you could have ever hoped to manage. Everyone in that book is complicit in the end of what happens to Eleanor. Through the book, Eleanor is not listened to. She is ignored and she is talked over, and people assume they know what's best for her, but they really don't look out for her at all. Her family haven't. Dr. Montague, for all of his talk, explains how he would take Eleanor out of this situation if anyone was at risk. He is so sure of his scientific approach, but he doesn't take her out. They never should have subjected her to this house, to these hauntings, and she for once has felt free. She feels like she is home, and she's still denied that voice in her final moments in the head going, why isn't anyone doing anything? That's such a sad message for Eleanor, because everyone is willing to tell her what she knows, what she does, what's right and what's wrong, and yet no one actually helps her. We should talk a moment about the great queer representation in Theo, in Theodora, and the fact that she was, at this time, one of the characters, it remains one of the characters in horror history that defied the bury your gays trope. It's been written about several times. It's a fascinating thing that basically any queer characters in horror for a very long time had to die. had to die. Her character behavior, the way she reacts, the way she was drawn at the time just felt very queer coded, and many people embraced her. Shirley Jackson could have easily drawn Theo as a catty, rivalrous woman to Eleanor, rival for Luke's affections. Luke in this book, as I said, he sort of supports the other characters, and he should be a romantic character, but he's not. He doesn't come across that way in the book at all. And the two women, they sort of flirt with him, but it's not overtly romantic or sexual in it. It's much more that Theo and Eleanor are sort of competing for each other's attention, and they're jealous of Luke because it takes the other away from them. Theo has much more of a stronger sense of her own identity in the book than Eleanor has, and that's maybe why Theo does not succumb to the hauntings, is not as affected by them. She runs, whereas Eleanor watches. That scene with the picnic, Theo runs and says, "Do not look back." This speaks to someone who has lived an experience of do not linger, do not look back at the horror, just keep going. And that's why Theo survives. So there's lots of theories about what's going on with The Haunting of Hill House. The house did it all of it. And there's no psychology whatsoever, it's just nasty ghosts. It's a combination of the house and Nell. So Eleanor did do some of the writing on the wall. She maybe messed up Theo's room, or was it the house doing all of it and Eleanor unfortunately got blamed? Was it mass hysteria? Some people go with that the house isn't haunted at all. This is a case of mass hysteria. Everyone has been messed up. Or the wild one is that they were all trying to mess Nell up for whatever reason. It was all a psychological experiment that Dr. Montague secretly has said to them, this girl is really sensitive, let's see if we can make something happen. And they're trying to spark something. And I think that's an interesting interpretation. I'm still going to go with spooky. I can't talk about The Haunting of Hill House without referencing the adaptations that were done of this book. The film version, The Haunting of 1963, great ghost story. If you have never watched The Haunting, watch it. It is pretty faithful to the book. It gets so much of the essence of Eleanor's vulnerability and her sadness. There's a scene in it where the actress who's playing Eleanor goes to her room when she's in Hill House, and she does this kind of childlike cry because she's so scared, and it just wrenches your heart out. But it's a very creepy, very well shot film. They built ceilings on the set to give it this feeling of claustrophobia. Eleanor is much more interested in Dr. Montague. They sort of have him as a love interest and her being kind of wide-eyed looking at him. And it loses some of the psychological impact of the book, but they still create a great ghost story. And there are some chilling scenes in that film. So well done. We do not discuss the 1999 version. Roger Ebert liked it. But no, everything was fine with the 1963 version, and then they take it and then they go, you know what, the backstory of Hill House, let's make it really ludicrous and over the top and have all these kind of links in there. They tried to explain too much. They tried to explain too much of a book that does not require and did not want explanation. Of course, there was the miniseries, The Haunting of Hill House by Mike Flanagan of 2018. I love that series. It isn't a direct adaptation. It takes the names, it takes the essence of Hill House, but it builds all of the characters around it, and it takes it way out of the original text, but makes it a completely modern story, reinvents it. But there's really nice nods and references to the book through the series. The thing I love most about the series is trying to spot the ghosts in the background. I'm one of those people. I watched that series several times so I could just see the ghosts, and every time I was like, awful. I know there was a miniseries, Rose Red, by Stephen King in 2002. I have not seen it. I don't know anything about it, but Stephen King, huge fan and advocate of this book. He made this series that was loosely based on it. So not sure about that. But if anyone's seen it, let me know. And there was a novel that was a sequel to this book, The Haunting on the Hill. And that was by Elizabeth Hand. That was released in 2023. And I have read that. I was not in love with it. It didn't feel particularly fresh. It didn't feel particularly innovative. It kind of went down that weird house, strange route. I won't go into any more detail about the book for that reason, because it just wasn't for me. And maybe you've read it and you enjoyed it. And there probably are different adaptations, radio adaptations, theatre. I think there was a stage play. Let me know if you've seen them. That is my run through of The Haunting of Hill House, a book that I love. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful psychological horror. It's an uncomfortable read. It's not an easy read, even though it's a short book at points, because it does set you off kilter. I find this book scary and unsettling, not kind of sleep with the lights on scary, but definitely uncomfortable and very well crafted. What are your favorite things about the book? What are the things that you think worked? And what do you think doesn't work? If you are not a fan of the book, if you've read it and you were like, okay, I have questions or I'm not so sure, let me know in the comments. I want to hear your theories. I want to hear what you think was happening in the house. Is it a haunting? Is it psychological? Is it someone doing something awful? Do you think it deserves the title of one of the scariest books of all time? Can you think of another haunted house story that does it better? Let me know in the comments, and let me know any other spooky books that you would like a deep dive on. Remember, if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please do subscribe to my channel so I can keep bringing you more spooky book and spooky movie reviews, deep dives, chats, just various rants. Sometimes that happens. I would love to see more of you. Remember, never trust a house on a hill, and stay spooky. Bye-bye.